Hi, I'm Julie Goodwin, and today I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful gnocchi with a basil pesto sauce. So this is a really yummy traditional Italian dinner, and I learned how to make gnocchi in Florence from a beautiful lady called Patrizia, and she showed us how to make this lovely feather-light gnocchi. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. So basically for this recipe you need about 1 kilo of potatoes. And it doesn't matter if the potatoes are different sizes, but you need to cut them into similar sized pieces so that they cook nice and evenly. So basically 1 kilo of your dirty potatoes is going to be 5, some smaller, some larger. That's about 1 kilo. And what you want is to cut them into pieces that are similar to one another. So a littler potato goes in halves, a bigger potato might go into thirds or quarters, just so that they cook at the same rate as each other. So I'm going to cook these until they're tender right to the centre. They can't be crunchy in the middle, otherwise you end up with lumps in your gnocchi, and that's not what you want. So there's many different ways of doing this. You can roast your potatoes in the skins or whatever, but I boil them. That's the simplest, most cost-effective way to do it. Okay, so they've boiled away and they're nice and soft inside. I'll show you how I know. Just going to strain those. So you can see that these are beautiful and soft because a skewer or a little knife goes straight through with no resistance. If there's anything crunchy in the middle, you want to keep cooking them. So lovely. So I've got 1 kilo of boiled potatoes. I've got ½ a cup of flour, 1 egg and a bit of salt and extra flour for making. This is how you make beautiful light gnocchi. So what I'm using here is called a potato ricer. So it's a bit like a garlic press, but really big. If you don't have one, I'd recommend you try and find one from a homeware store like House or Robin's Kitchen or somewhere like that. And it makes the best mashed potatoes ever. Way better than your old potato masher. So you pop a piece of potato in and just do this, and it comes out like gorgeous little worms. Now, if your potatoes are undercooked, you'll find that it's really hard to put that through the ricer, and you'll end up with sort of raw chunks at the bottom here. So we don't want that, we want fully cooked potato. If you're making mashed potato instead of gnocchi, you would put a giant lump of butter in that bowl and rice the potatoes over the butter and mix it around, a bit of salt, maybe a bit of milk if you like it a bit looser, and it's just divine. Anyway, this is going to be our beautiful little potato dumplings. Into that mashed potato, I'm going to add an egg. And ½ a cup of flour. I'm going to mix that all around until it forms a bit of a dough. One of the tricks to this gnocchi is that there's not too much flour, because the flour weighs it down and makes it heavy, and also that you don't work it too much so that it remains nice and light and fluffy when you cook it. So once it comes together in that beautiful dough, you're going to tip it out onto the bench, a floured bench. Now this is quite a sticky gnocchi, and it depends on how watery the potatoes are as to how sticky the dough is going to be. So use your judgment. It just needs to be pretty straightforward to work with. So you're going to bring it together. Give it a couple of little kneads, not too much. If you overwork it, it's going to be tough. Got this beautiful warm dough. We're going to shape it into a bit of a log and then cut it into, I don't know, maybe 6 pieces, and work with one little piece at a time. Some flour down, and you're going to roll this out into a snake. So just like you used to do with Play-Doh when you were a kid. And this has to roll out until about the thickness of your thumb. I always like to say your thumb if you've got normal sized thumbs. If you've got giant mutant thumbs or very skinny thumbs, find someone with a normal thumb and use theirs. So roll it out, roll it out. And you get this beautiful, pliant snake of potato dumpling. And you're going to cut that into about 2 centimetre lengths. And pop it onto a board or a tray that has plenty of flour down so that it's not going to stick, especially if you're not going to cook it straight away. Now with gnocchi, if you want to make this and freeze it ahead of time, you need to put it on a tray and freeze it on the tray, and once it's frozen, you can put it all into a bag and put it back into the freezer. And you cook it straight from frozen. You don't need to defrost it, or it'll go a bit soggy. But we're going to cook ours straight away today because we are hungry for gnocchi. So our gnocchi is made and ready to cook. And the beauty of it is that you can have it with all kinds of sauces, whether it's a tomato like a Napolitana sauce or burnt butter or a blue cheese sauce. I'm going to make it today with a beautiful fresh basil pesto. And this pesto you can also use as a dip, or you can spread it on bread. It is really lovely. So I've got some pine nuts toasting away in a pan here. And what you need to do when you're toasting pine nuts is put them on the heat and then watch them very carefully, because the minute you look away, they're going to burn, and they're the most expensive part of this dish, so you don't want to burn them. So once they reach a beautiful golden colour, what that does is it brings out all the flavour in the pine nuts. There's a real difference. Have a little taste of a raw one and have a taste after you've toasted it, and you'll see the difference. Okay, so those are nice and golden brown. Take them off the hot pan so they don't burn. And then we need some garlic. So this is Russian garlic. It's grown here locally on the Central Coast, so it's a lot milder than your normal garlic that you buy from the shops. So I'm going to use a little bit more than the recipe says. Beautiful big bulbs like that, but very, very mild in flavour. They smell divine. And then we've got some Parmesan. Now when you buy Parmesan, if you buy it in a block, it maintains the best flavour. If you buy it pre-grated, as soon as it's grated, it starts to sort of lose its pungency. And as for the green cylindrical packet of it, don't go there. Buy it in a block and grate it yourself. So because I'm going to use the food processor, I'm going to grate the Parmesan in the food processor, and that's going to go in first. And you need to cut it into kind of chunks, otherwise it'll just jam in the blades because it's nice and hard. So once that's sort of grated, you need about 3 cups of loosely packed basil, or about 2 bunches. So these are bunches that have come with the roots and the soil still on them. So once you've torn the leaves off, feel free to plant them in the garden and they'll keep growing. All right. Basil has a fairly soft stalk, so you don't have to worry too much if you get the stalks in with your pesto. Whereas if you're using rosemary or sage or another herb that has a really woody stalk, you don't want the stalks in. But we're going to process this. So Parmesan, basil, beautiful raw garlic, and our pine nuts have cooled off now. So we're going to start to blitz that up and pour oil in as it goes. Make sure you use a really good Australian extra virgin olive oil. That's what you need to use. Not the imported stuff. We have the best stuff here for this country. Away we go. Okay, that looks beautiful. If you want to make it vibrant and greener, you can put in some baby spinach or some rocket. We'll give it some pepperiness. This is just a pure pine nut basil pesto. So now we're going to pop that into a bowl, and once the gnocchi is cooking, we'll be scooping that out of the water and straight into the pesto. Okay, so our pesto's done and the gnocchi's ready to cook. I've got a beautiful pot of salty boiling water here, and I'm just going to drop them in a few at a time. They haven't stuck to the board because I put a nice lot of flour on the board so that they wouldn't stick. And what happens with gnocchi is you pop it in, just be really careful not to splash yourself, and it sinks right to the bottom. But once they cook, they bob up to the top. And if you think about it, so the potatoes already cooked, so the only things that need to cook through in a gnocchi are a little bit of flour and that egg. And once they're cooked, it bobs up to the top. So it only takes a minute or so. So as I put them in, the ones that went in first are bobbing up to the top. And as soon as they are right at the top of that water, you take them out and put them straight into that pesto sauce. And don't worry if a bit of that water goes in with it, because that'll loosen up the sauce and make it beautiful. When I'm ready to serve, when all the gnocchi's cooked, I'm going to put in a little bit more of the water that it cooked in just to loosen that pesto up. I'm going to gently stir it around. So these gnocchi are very delicate, they're very light. Gently stir it around, serve it onto a beautifully warmed plate, a lot of Parmesan cheese grated over the top and a little garnish, and there you have yourself a really yummy dinner.